Now we are standing in the north room, which is like the, let's say, the goal of the project, which is called Post Naturalia. Basically, it's all about comparison of aesthetic of technology and similarities in between culture, technology, and nature. So it's about 1 year ago I got really started to be fascinated by simple aesthetic forms which are present in the technology instruments or wiring, of all the systems of electricity, but also informations. And so, for instance, when you look at this, this is just a wire, but we are all dependent on wiring of society, because without copper, for instance, we wouldn't be able to get the light, we wouldn't be able to send email, etc., etc. So it is really our dependency on technology. And so it's all started with the simple experiments, doing little flowers out of trash, basically. And it all looks like trash, and it is trash. But in the same time, it is all made of erudition, because most of the stuff is made of electronic circuits, for instance. And these desks are, a product of a man's education, science, and erudition. But in the same time, all these systems are designed to be pragmatic, to work, but they are very, very similar to aesthetic of botanics and nature by itself. Now it's an interesting moment, because this is a part of installation. As you see, we are all of a sudden in a different light condition, and that's the aim, because I programmed the light in this space, so it goes every 3 and every 5 minutes. It goes to this almost dark situation, when you can also enjoy the view from the windows, and all of a sudden you realize we are also a part of our system of streets, highways, and cities, which are basically presented here. On the other hand, first reaction of people usually on this form is, aha, okay, it looks like a city. That's right, but it was not the main principle. I didn't want to create a model of a city in a very obvious way, because that would be too childish. We would be apparently able to make more urban situation with streets and squares and models of buildings, but that was not the thing. We were almost protecting ourselves from this idea. We were rather creating a kind of landscape, but more from a point of view of bug or beetle, who is inspired by man's culture and technology. So from the very first moment when we agreed with Maramotti Collection to do such a kind of installation, things got sparkling, and we got a lot of energy, and we started to work. So it's basically 1 year of work here, and as you can see, every square centimeter is really properly designed. So it looks like you come with a lot of trash and put it on the floor, but it's not like that. We spent a lot of time to make this composition, and it was basically 1 year of work. And if I say we, I always say we, because it's not only a work of one man, because if I would be doing it alone, it would take me years to do it. So we were working in our collective, which is for me also important, that there are more people involved, and I quite enjoyed that collaboration. This part is, let's say, the main installation, but there is also another part which is called laboratory, and it has for me the same importance because I was many times, having a shows and exhibiting my projects, kind of feeling that something is missing, because most of the time when I do the sculpture or installation or work of art, I do it in the studio, and there it is always in a kind of unfinished situation. And whenever I finish the sculpture, put it in the gallery, I'm getting a little bit nervous, like something is missing, because the process is not a part of the thing, naturally. So this time I decided to show and present the project as a part of the result. So, and also the reason to make the laboratory was to have the possibility to show all these, let's say, broad scale and examples of consequences, because of course this is very, I would say, aesthetic way of seeing things, and it's almost meditative. But in the laboratory you see all different kind of sketches and analogies with systems of electronic circuits, but also cities taken from the space during night time, and all these similarities are articulated in laboratory in order to understand better this installation. But we will speak about it later on in the laboratory. Every, let's say, developed kind of flower has its own herbario sheet. So I was trying to be a little bit disciplined. So this artificial nature has also its own catalog or herbario. So you will see them also in the laboratory. So this is a kind of inner discipline. And yeah, I mean, it's all kind of complex system which is basically imitating the technology, but it's also a vision of a possible nature, how it would look like after we are gone or humankind is somehow disappeared. So this is the aesthetic, how it would look like, because these are the leftovers of our society and technology. It is a very intense experience, because the place where I was gathering the material is a garbage site in Prague, where they are throwing away all these electronics instruments, and it's incredible. But it's only a small city, Prague, so I bet there are even much more incredible sites. But I was really astonished by this apotheosis of downfall, because when you are in this site, it's 200 meters long hall, 80 meters wide, and it's 6 meters high pile of everything, from microwaves through keyboards, TV screens, kettles, printers, and you are just, climbing, and you have your one leg is in the printer, the other hand is holding keyboards, and this is really incredible. It's really apotheosis of downfall. And there we were taking our material, sorting it, taking little parts, to make this thing more complex and more complex. If you have any questions, of course, don't hesitate to ask me.
Well, congratulations for your project. And I wanted to ask you, because you were saying a little bit about the relationship between the inside of this project and then the outside. And I was very curious, as it is a site-specific project, I was very curious about how did you plan the relationship with this space? Could you talk a little bit more on that? I don't know if you... But I think you have planned it very much, and so you will have so much to say about it.
Yes. But of course, I mean, I visited the site before, so I knew where it is going to be shown. So, for instance, I really like this kind of industrial architecture, which has been rebuilt into a magnificent space for art and ideas in a very intimate way of showing it. I think it's very special. And I was really impressed by visiting the collection upstairs because it is really a different kind of experience from the museums where you usually are with a lot of people, which is good, but there are all these routines like guards and so you should always behave and you don't have this intimate situation. This is where you have it. So when you are upstairs and standing in front of the painting and there is nobody, it's really a different level of absorbing or seeing art. That's one thing. Then also the architecture, which is industrial and really I like it very much. So I knew it's not a high space, and I knew that it's good to concentrate energy on the floor. So I hope it really fits also the room, so you don't really grow high. And I wanted to somehow intrude in more spaces in the museum and also outside. So outside we have a completely different way of sculpting, little sculptures. They are called praying woods. So maybe, well, we can go outside to speak about them if you like, and then we will go to the laboratory, which is, by the way, a former pattern room where Max Mara, during the days of production clothes, were creating patterns, and which is also interesting. So that's why we inserted our laboratory in this pattern room.
So I was wondering, how did you imagine the interaction with the visitors? Because here we can walk on the links, and how important is it for you? How did you imagine it?
Well, yes, I mean, I don't mind if people step, as you are now stepping on the installation. I don't mind, it's the installation should occupy the space quite intensely and behave like a mycelium grid in a way, like mushrooms. So, and this is so similar to how the technology is, spreading around, like worldwide web, worldwide mycelium of connections. So therefore, it's basically all over. But I don't mind if you step on it. But in the same time, every small detail here is a kind of drawing and part of the huge installation. So I asked the museum staff to, from time to time, they took a picture of the installation from the top, and they will be putting it after, especially after opening and later on, back to the same composition. Now the light, I think, is going again down, which is the moment I like very much, because especially when you stay here, you have this dreamy look from the window, and therefore we also put a special foil on the windows because there was too much light still coming from outside. But now when it is dark here, you really have this kind of dreamy look to the garden, and this is the real nature behind the window, and this is the artificial nature. I also forgot to speak about you here. Do you hear something? I almost forgot. The sounds, which I was not sure if it is necessary to accompany the installation with the sound, because I believe that it is strong enough by its visual form. But when I tried to do it, I realized it's not bad. So all the synthetics, it's all synthetic sounds. It is the sounds of data transfers, which are distorted and so. So it reminds you noises of bugs, but it's all artificial, as all the installation is artificial. This is the way where you can walk, by the way. So.
When you were doing your research and thinking about ideas of the post-natural and perhaps the post-human in this whole kind of body of ideas? Were there any particular texts or influences that you were thinking about?
Good question. I am quite a more intuitive guy, so I was not. I was not spending. Even though I would love to, but I didn't spend so much time in doing some theory research. But in the book, and I'm very glad about it. I invited two persons. One is a Czech philosopher and environmental activist in the same time, who wrote quite interesting text, which is I recommend you to read it, because he's also introducing us a lot of comparison to history of thinking about the nature, and also there is he's mentioning there, for instance, Buckminster Fuller, this famous mathematician, and Wilhelm Haeckel, who was a propagator of Darwinism, and it's quite interesting text. And the other person who was recommended to me by Miloš Wojciechowski, this guy, is an Australian thinker and philosopher, Douglas Kahn, who wrote several short parts of the text where he is also introducing us very interesting moments from history of science, where, for instance, scientists were trying to stimulate flowers by connecting them into electronic circuits in order to produce larger mushroom, potatoes and stuff like that. So let's say the theory is coming after intuition, in my case. Let's go outside and then to the laboratory. Nature is coming, It's a real nature. Yeah, it's not a model. Implemented 4 sculptures, one is there, one is leaning to the tree, this one and this one, and I call them praying woods. And I always like, or I insist on titles of my works, because I don't want to leave them as orphans without any support of language. On the other hand, I do sculpture in order not to use language. So, this situation is for artists usually a bit of discomfort, because most of us, we are introverts who decided to speak with materia and not to use language. But of course, all society, is run by language, so I can't really escape explanations. On the other hand, I prefer when audience or viewer is making first his own explanation or theory, and then he speaks with me, because when I do this, of course I have some story, so then people tend to look at it as I told them, and that's a little bit of pity, because many times I am receiving feedbacks which are very unexpected to me as well. And this is all enlarging the potential of the sculpture. So, this is just my introduction to, the topic of speaking about art. But let's speak about it. When I was doing the mod, it is a casted sculpture. It's aluminium. It's not wood. Finally, but the models were made of just an ordinary piece of wood, branches from the forest. And when I was doing the models, I was questioning myself: are you crazy? This is really childish. You are like a 5-year-old boy, or very primitive, because making a sculpture like this is really retroactive and primitive. With knowing all this history of, modeling sculptures and doing sculptures in traditional way, but I still believe that it's good to get things simplified, So I made these simple forms of woods, which are very figurative, of course. But I wanted to make them pray to the nature, which is absurd. Nature doesn't have to pray. It's all around us. And I simply made this. I think there's 5 forms. I'm showing here only 4, and here they are, made of aluminium and silver coated and patinized. So you don't really, at the first glance, understand what kind of material it is. It looks like, it doesn't look like bronze, it doesn't look like aluminium, so they should look like some material from moon, because it is not very typical surface. When you see a bronze sculpture, you immediately understand it's bronze, but this is sort of different. And for me, it was a relief that we got out of this material of wood. So since it started to be in aluminium, I felt much better with the result. When it is only in the wood, it's a kind of kid's joke. But I like to balance always on the level of being deep, but also banal, So this is the edge I like to be on, and I like to also dishonest a little bit the topics which are, let's say, heavy or deep, and making them half a joke, but still it's like input to think about it. Any questions? More questions in laboratory.
the wood pieces in this shape, or did you
No.
cast with several of them?
I just brought a bunch of branches from forest, and then I cut them in different kind of like legs here and legs here. Then you have to make a mold from silicone. Then you have to cast into silicone wax. And then you cast from wax. It's called lost wax method. And then you get the piece of aluminum, but only pieces like this and like this, like this. And then we are welding together the aluminum together and chisel it so it's not seeable, and so it's kind of a process. This is what we all do in my studio. Not casting the aluminum, but the rest is done by us. So it's a sculpting process. It takes time.
Are they meant to always be outside? Or do you want them inside sometimes?
I think outside it's the best for them. But they can survive also inside. And it's of course very important where they are placed, that's the thing. Here I'm really satisfied, especially with this one who is leaning to the tree. He's a kind of half alcoholic, like this guy in the blue jacket, like me. So this one is not so religious, but we also have nicknames. This is a Muslim. I am afraid he's not now orientated to Mecca. But I hope he doesn't mind. These are Christians, and this one is alcohol guy.
It's interesting because you told that it doesn't make sense to pray for the nature, but we like in the base of our religion, it's like idols, yes, idols. So it was wooden masks and so on. So like even that you give the name for different kind of religion, like it shows us it's coming from the really praying to the nature. Like, did you think it before? It just came after you.
It came after.
Okay.
It came after. Again, I'm very intuitive. Like this is a good idea to do, and then I do, and then I just do it. But this just, I think it's a very important thing because I think a lot of people have very inspiring ideas and sketches, but to materialize things, it's a fight. It's a sport. You have to be very stubborn and maniac. Even small things, they are more complicated than they look like, and this is my experience. So idea is important, but the same importance is to survive and to finish the process of doing it.
Thank you.
Let's go to laboratory. And this is your first time here?
Yes, it was a first here, and we went upstairs to the collection. So we went to the library, but we won't give them back now.
Okay.
And we were seeing some of the works and so interesting. And then when we entered the library, it's amazing.
Not hidden, but not. Yes. No, what is it?
It's like not hidden because
Yes.
hidden maybe it could have like different.
Yeah.
But
Not emphasized. Or,
but very in harmony with the
yeah.
they do it really well.
Okay, I'm glad.
Yes.
Yes.
That's three very different parts.
Yeah. Did you see it before? Today? No? Okay. I see that you are starting to smile, and that's for me a good sign and good moment, because this is how it should be. So, as I told you, in the North Room you are meditating and enjoying the aesthetic, thinking, but here you should really get into the process of making it with also all these consequences quite obvious to get, almost didactic. But I wanted to do it like that because I wanted to share the fascination of things I was speaking about: myceliums, computer desks, cauliflower as a brain, energy from potatoes, thinking about copper and our dependency about copper, Buckminster filler, electronic circuits, Moore's law, very interesting thing to me. Moore's law is, how to explain, in late 60s it was a guy who was working, I think he was one of co-founder of IBM, and he predicted that every 18 months, that means every year and a half, the number of transistors in an electronic circuit, basically in processors, will enlarge double time. So nobody was believing him. They said, okay, maybe for 5 years it can go like that, but it's still going on, So now you see that we are still getting into incredible miniaturization of electronic parts, and everything is getting smaller and faster. So, for instance, so this is the Moore's law. And so we divided this up. We wanted that this space is pleasant to be. It is a kind of copy of our studio without, it's not, precise, of course. It's just the spirit we brought. So when we loaded the van, it was a camion with a lot of stuff, and it has arrived here without our presence. The stuff of the museum was quite surprised what is this, what the guys, what they want to do with that, because it was just, this trash and chemicals and all parts of everything. But that was the way how to make this space alive, because if you build it from a new materials, it's always fake. But we brought also this plywood desks with us, with patina, all these platforms, and also the floor. The floor is always important to create an atmosphere in the room. So this is my collection of old linoleums, which I was gathering all half year ago in Prague when I was driving with my car. When I saw some destruction site, I always came and loaded all these linoleums. So this aesthetic is important for us, because in our studio we also have this kind of strange floor. And okay, and then we have also videos. Let's have a look. There are 3 videos, all of them are about 20-25 minutes, but they are not supposed to be seen from the beginning to the end. It's just the atmosphere. It is about to show how we are making it, basically. So the only strict thing in the video is that we never show faces, never. Because when you show a face in the video, it all of a sudden becoming a documentary, and you starting to ask, who is this guy, what is he doing there, etc., etc. So you never see a face in the video, so it's only hands, so it's anonymous. So it's a story of making postnaturalia to happen. Blah blah blah, a lot of all kind of consequences. Here people can sit and have a look on the pictures. It's free to take, as a souvenirs. And here we have these herbariolists I was speaking about. And I was afraid to show them in the regular gallery space, because then they look too much nice. They even look too much nice now, but okay, I don't mind. But I was, I think for me it was important to make these drawings, because they are also a part of the book we produced. The book has 2 parts. One part is Scriptum Herbarium, which is a comparison of these herbarium lists with examples of herbariums from different sources, also from Prague Botanical Garden, and also Museum of Biology here in Reggio Emilia. It was always these similarities of flowers. They were always found later. It was not that I saw this photo and make this. I first made my flower. Sometimes I was naming it with a pseudo-Latin name, like this one, Helianthus styrograndis. And then later on, we were going through the sources and trying to find some formal similarities, So I never worked like, I will make particular flower from nature, which will be copied into my drawings. So later on, please have a look on the book. As I told you, there are all these texts, which I'm very glad for, because if the book would be without text, it would be kind of like only showing my way of thinking. But in the book there are more analogies and more inputs in the text, and this is also enlarging the capacity of all the project. This is interesting also because this model of a human body and the weighing system is from Napoli chapel. I forgot the name of the chapel, but it was done by Raimondo di Sangro in 18th century. It's quite old, and it's a model of the human's body. And when Luigi was visiting my studio and I was working on these strange homunculus or on the sculpture which is in the corridor, he immediately pointed out these formal similarities of making models of human body, which I was not aware of, but it is also a part of this complicated structure. Maybe we can go over there. This part is kind of really showing how we do the things, you know. So when we were building this complicated installation, we were, dismounting all these electronic circuits to very detailed parts and putting them into the sculpture. So here, for those who didn't see the detailed form of the sculpture there, or they were not paying too much attention, here they can see how detailed the work was, and how it was a lot of work to achieve the same kind of precision which nature is doing by itself. Over there you see, for instance, borrowed models from the museum here in Reggio Emilia. These are the models from the beginning of 19th century, and I'm very glad that we have the possibility of this comparison of historical attempts of understanding nature and educating people. So we have these things here. We are also showing this story of copper. As I told you in the Nord room, without copper we would be lost. So all these little details and the little wires are part of the story. And the last very interesting example, which is a kind of proof of the things I am constantly repeating here. This thing we found when everything was finished and already being transported to Reggio Emilia. My colleague Richard, he went to junkyard, smaller one, and he found this. So it's a ready-made. We didn't touch it. So this is a proof that the technology, is behaving like a nature also by itself. This is a pragmatic part from some instrument. It was not done by us, and it looks completely as some flower or a routing system. So it is very valuable proof of that our effort had a meaning, because the ready-made shows how it is by itself. It's the same, the blue thing on the platform here, it also looks purely aesthetical, but it's just inside wiring system of a copy machine. So when you go into the objects, into the instruments, you are all of a sudden finding these systems which are very natural. And here we are showing how we do and develop the flowers from the bulbs with different kind of chemicals and etc. etc. So I would call it a kind of Gesamtkunstwerk, when you are using sound, smell, videos, drawings, sketches. It's a complex, not complex, but it's a suggestive installation. So I would like that people feel here as we as an artist just disappeared and went for lunch, and the process is still going on.
May I ask you, like how do you see the art in the future? I mean, we're now entering the century when like of post-natural, post-biological art with almost like scientific approach to it. And so do you think like in future artists will need kind of scientific education to continue in this direction? Like, I mean, biology or anatomy, medicine, because it's like really entered deep inside the science, no?
It is, but I think it's impossible because the world has got to be specialized. We are not anymore in the situation of Leonardo da Vinci, and you can invent, new computers, new instruments, because everything got so specialized. So it's impossible. I think artists, they should stay only, creative and do things, not to stay too much in theory and experiment with forms. And I'm, easy guy who is having a lot of joy from making things, and this is what I suggest also to other artists. Just do it and bring it, place it somewhere, and let's see what it is able to radiate. But you cannot compete with the erudition of scientists. It's impossible. They are far away beyond our capacities of knowledge.
I have a question. I feel it's incredible to dive into your world, and I feel we understand your creative process just by looking at your studio. And so my question is, how many people work with you? Because this is a very minutious process, minutious work, and it took 1 year just to complete all this exhibition spaces. So how do you do it?
It's an everyday life, and that's why it's interesting, because we all living everyday life. I'm lucky because I work mainly with two other guys. We are friends. One of them he's also an active artist, and it is very delicate situation. I'm aware of it because I don't like a principle of a studio where people are only in a position of assistant, and obeying the, exact imagination of artists. We are sharing the topic, and our vision is quite similar. So the very beneficial and benefit of it that we don't have to explain much how to do it. We just start, okay, this is good, let's do it. So they help me a lot. And then there are two guys and me. And then we have irregular helpers from like absolvents from art schools, 2 or 3. If we are full in the studio, sometimes there are days we are 5 people in the studio, not more. Sometimes I'm alone, which I also like very much, because for instance, to do the drawings, it's a kind of still very intimate thing for me. So I try to do drawings when I'm alone in the studio, and when we are in the collective, it's like that. You hear the sound, pom pom pom, tools, machines, and it's kind of masculine atmosphere with a lot of fun, a lot of jokes, and I'm really enjoying it. So it's beyond the capacity of one person. I mean, you can do it, but it would be in a 5 years old time. I would be able to do it, but it would take me 5 years. Now it was only 1 year. So now this is finished, and we go on, and we will do other projects together, hopefully. And for me, this is a miracle. I didn't expect it can go like this, and I'm really happy that we can freely do what we want to do. And I'm from the post-communistic country. And I'm from generation when I was born in '73, and I experienced the Velvet Revolution, so-called Velvet Revolution in '89 when I was 16. And it was a big change, because before, in a socialistic regime, it was not possible to do these things freely. I mean, you would be persecuted because you are a strange guy who is not doing things which they want. You couldn't travel, you couldn't say what you want to say. So, and because I experienced that only little, You know, my parents, they were living all their life in this shit. So I'm more, you know, I feel a value in freedom of doing things, because I know it could be different, it could be bad, and like in countries like you know, with no democracy, people are still facing these incredible problems. So I think we should all celebrate our freedom of doing things. We have a great time. We can really do what we need to do, and then let's see what will happen.
Do you also create like mobile or moving sculptures?
Yes, yes. This is a sculpture which is speaking and talking and moving. It has a form of a bird, but it is articulating and speaking kind of very simple language, because raven is a very smart animal, almost like papagay. He can learn a little bit of speaking, so he's having a simple language which has been kind of stolen from the advertisement of large corporations. So for instance, he's saying, let's make things better. That's Philips, you know, and then he's adding, just do it, you know, so it's Nike, you know. So if you steal from them, it's becoming these banal sentences are very easy, but they can be metaphysical, you know, let's make things better. I mean, okay, but how? Just do it.
How do you do it, like with computer programming?
Yes, it's a you know, it's all electronics and mechanics, and when I do electronic part, I'm always asking a friend of us who is genius in programming. Yeah. This is also moving. This is speaking. These trees are, for instance, walking around. So if you go to my webpage, there are videos from these installations, and this is the best. How to see it. Yeah, this is also a mechanical sculpture. But this project is a kind of special because it's very complex, and we devoted for this project all 1 year. And I didn't want to make it too much mechanical, because of course it can be moving in the wind. There can be a lot of lights. No. I believed. And this is maybe the last thing to say about it, that the sculpture is like battery, because if you put your energy into something, this big installation, it must be there, the time and energy. Of course, it's a question if it's a good sculpture or not, but the energy is there, you know, and I believe in it, because there's so much attention and time being spent with it. It's there. Okay. Thank you for your attention. And if you have questions, of course, I can still maybe say something. Thank you. And enjoy the old house. And I think it's a great house. It's a great house. They have a vision, and it's special. And they also let you work free, let people be free in the building, and that's great. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay.